It's time for Survivor Angels, an approach to strengthen trauma survivors. Here, you can escape what draws negativity and engage your positive abilities and the gifts that you've always had. Let's activate your angels. And to help you on that journey, here's Chaplain Jody.
There's a moment that almost no one prepares you for. It's not the moment of impact. It's not the crisis. It's not the night that everything fell apart. It's the moment after. The moment when you realize that you survived. And instead of relief, you feel disoriented, different, out of sync with the world you just re-entered. If you've ever thought, I should be grateful I'm alive, so why do I feel like I don't belong here anymore? You're not alone. And you're not broken. Welcome to Survivor Angels. We talk a lot about survival in our culture. We talk about resilience, we talk about strength, we talk about getting through it. What we don't talk about nearly enough is what happens after survival, when the body is still here, but the internal map has changed. It's about as wonky as you can get. You don't feel like who you were before, but you're not who you thought you'd be afterward either. Time feels strange. Your intuition feels louder or maybe unfamiliar. You notice patterns you didn't used to notice. And you feel so deeply sometimes, overwhelmingly so. And somewhere quietly in the background, there's a question forming. What happened to me? Really? This podcast begins right there. Not at the trauma itself, but at the threshold that comes after it. You see, survival changes the way time lives in you. So let's start with something concrete. One of the most documented effects of trauma, clinically, neurologically, is time distortion. This isn't spiritual language yet. This is neuroscience. Research on trauma and PTSD consistently shows that the brain's relationship to time changes after overwhelming events. The amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for threat detection, flight or flight, it becomes hyperactive. The hippocampus, which helps sequence memories and place them in time, often gets disrupted. Well, what does that mean in real life? It means the past doesn't always stay in the past. It means memories don't feel over. It means moments can feel stretched, collapsed, or strangely layered. You might notice that certain sounds or smells pull you instantly backward. Weeks pass quickly, but moments feel endless. You feel older than your years, or suddenly childlike again. I've experienced both of those. This isn't weakness. It's simply your nervous system adapting to survival. But here's where it gets interesting. For many survivors, this altered sense of time doesn't stop at memory. It expands into perception. It's when the world feels thinner. A lot of people describe this without knowing how to name it. They'll say things like, everything feels closer somehow. Or I notice things that I didn't notice before. And then I feel like there's more going on than I can explain. This is where some people get scared. This is where others feel seen for the first time. We are all different. So we are going to respond and feel differently. In spiritual language, this is often described as the veil thinning. Now, let me be very clear about how we'll use that phrase here. The veil is not a wall. It's not something to tear down, and it's not a permanent state. The veil is simply the boundary between ordinary awareness and expanded awareness. And for many people, trauma presses on that boundary. Not because trauma is meant to happen, not because suffering is sacred, but because when the familiar world breaks, perception reorganizes. Psychology calls this post-traumatic growth. Spiritual traditions call it initiation. And neuroscience calls it neuroplasticity under stress. Don't you love all those different? Yeah, right? But it's all the same thing. Different languages, that's all it is. But the same human experience. You see, you didn't leave reality. You're simply sensing more of it. You are more sensitive. One of the most important things I'll say in this podcast is this. When perception expands, reality doesn't disappear. It becomes layered. Think about it like this. You don't stop seeing the surface of the ocean just because you learn there's depth beneath it, right? Survivors often report heightened intuition, stronger empathy, a sense of being accompanied, meaning appearing in coincidence. For those of you who have experienced that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This doesn't mean you're suddenly mystical or special. No, it simply means that your nervous system has been forced to remap safety and presence and awareness. You've crossed a threshold. You just stepped across there. And thresholds have always mattered in human history, always. And then there's the sacred geometry, the pattern beneath the chaos. Let's talk about something that might surprise you. Sacred geometry. It's like, how does that figure into post-traumatic stress? Oh, it does. This isn't fringe. This is math and nature and pattern recognition. Sacred geometry refers to recurring geometric patterns that are found throughout nature and the universe. There's the Fibonacci sequence in shells and galaxies. There's the hexagonal structure of honeycombs, the spiral patterns of hurricanes and DNA. I love spiral patterns. And these patterns exist whether we notice them or not. Well, after trauma, many people report an increased awareness of just that pattern. Not visually, but emotionally and rationally. You suddenly start noticing cycles repeating, certain themes returning, moments aligning in unexpected ways. Now, this isn't about assigning meaning to everything. No. It's about recognizing that order exists even when life feels shattered. Survival cracks open the illusion that life is linear. Life is not linear. And in that cracking, pattern becomes visible. So let's talk about angels. Angels are the accompaniment part here, not intervention. This is usually the moment when people either lean in or pull away on me here. So let's slow it down. Trust me, walk with me on this. All right. When people talk about angels in the context of survival, they're often not describing winged beings appearing in rooms. Mine never appeared like that. They're describing accompaniment, accompanying you. It's a sense of not being alone during unbearable moments, being protected from something they can't quite name, a presence that steadies rather than instructs. I don't know what I would have done in my traumatic moments in life if I was not so cognizant, so aware of my angels accompanying me. They were there with you too. Across cultures, centuries, angels have been understood less as rescuers and more as messengers and witnesses. In Hebrew scripture, the word malach literally means messenger. In Christian mysticism, yes, there is such a thing, Christian mysticism. It's fascinating. Angels are described as intelligences that stabilize creation. Intelligences that stabilize creation. And in Islamic tradition, angels record, they accompany, and they guard. Different theologies, same core idea. Angels don't override free will. Those who are taking my soul alchemy class, they're learning all about that right now. And angels don't demand belief. They don't ask for worship. That is not what they are about. They accompany. They are always there with us if we just pay attention. And many survivors say the same thing in modern language. I don't know how I made it through that, but something was with me. How many times have you heard someone say that? You don't have to name that something. But you don't have to dismiss it either. I would never dismiss it. Maybe at one point in time I did, but that was like eons ago for me. So why do survivors feel between worlds? And even feeling the presence of your angels, it's not unusual for you to still feel like you're between worlds. In fact, you might even feel that more so after your trauma and after you realize how the angels were there. Here's something that's rarely said out loud. After survival, many people feel like they're standing between worlds. They might phrase it a little bit differently, but they're not dissociated, not detached, but in between. You can function, you can work, you can even laugh, and still feel like the old rules don't fully apply anymore. This is not pathology. Anthropologists call this liminality, a transitional state where identity dissolves before reforming. In traditional cultures, liminal states were recognized and ritually supported. In modern culture, we medicate them or we ignore them. Survival angels exists because that space deserves language. This is not, nor has it ever been, a trauma podcast. And that matters. Let me say something gently, but clearly. This is not a podcast where we endlessly recount trauma. If you've listened to the previous 13 seasons, you know that. This is about reliving pain for catharsis when and where it's appropriate. And I take the angels leading, guiding me on that. And this is not about spiritual bypassing, pretending suffering was worth it because it led somewhere. What we're doing here is different. We're talking about orientation. How do you live in your internal compass when it's shifted? How do you stay grounded when perception expands? And how do you integrate the unseen without losing your humanity? And this takes all kinds of forms. And this is where angels belong. This is where the veil belongs. This is where meaning belongs. Not as spectacle, but as support. And this conversation is so needed right now. We are living in a time where survival is no longer rare. Collective trauma, pandemics, violence, loss, instability has pressed on the veil for millions of people simultaneously. Mental health professionals are reporting increased spiritual questioning. Spiritual leaders are seeing more psychological distress. The old silos aren't working. We need spaces where psychology and spirituality can speak to each other. We need experiences that can be named without being inflated, and where people can feel sane without feeling sensitive. That's what Survivor Angels podcast is here to hold going forward. Because the angels have said, and you have said, that this is what's needed. It's a quiet reorientation. If you take nothing else from this episode, take this. You don't feel normal because normal no longer fits. You survived something, maybe multiple somethings, that required more of you than you knew you had. And now your task is not to go back, but to integrate forward. In the episodes that follow, we'll talk about how the veil shows up without destabilizing you, why angels are experienced more often after survival. Go back and listen to some of my previous podcasts of actual accounts from people, not from me, from the people that it happened to. How time, memory, and intuition interact. It's all connected. How sacred patterns help the nervous system find order again. And how to live awake without leaving your life. This isn't a linear journey. It's a spiral. And if you're here, you're already on it. Thank you for being here. If this episode felt different than what you're used to hearing about trauma or survival, that's intentional. Survivor Angels is a conversation for those who know something shifted and are ready to understand it without losing themselves in the process. We'll walk this together. Human first, awake second. There's my empath going. And always accompanied.
Thanks again for joining Chaplain Jody on Survivor Angels. For more information, go to chaplainjody.me. That's chaplainjody.me. This is Dave Schrader. Until next time, sending you off to activate your angels.